After my 22nd birthday, I thought to myself it was time for me to move out from my parents' house. When I informed them about this idea, they were supportive. They thought it was a good idea to be take the next step into being more independent. My dad promised me to help me to find a place to live. I was considered either a small house to own or even a small apartment to rent. But I wasn't really sure what the prices are, so my dad helped me and he managed to find this apartment complex in town and it had actually a decent rent. So after signing a lease, I moved in. And I was introduced to my next door neighbor. His name was Clemens. He was a guy in his 35 years old, was single. My name is Stella, by the way, just to mention it. And at first, he was really friendly and very talkative, which I didn't mind. I'm actually a quite talkative person myself. And after been living there for about 2 months, Clemens often came to my door asking me if I want to come over for dinner or having some wine. I'm not a, I'm not much in for any alcoholic beverage like beer, wine, or anything like it. So I always declined. But he didn't give up though. I did had a boyfriend named Peter. He was actually around the same age as me. We have been dating for well, it's a few years now. And we didn't live together, but we have been talking about it. And eventually, after some time, he did move in. And it was just going well. I mean, we love each other. But the thing is, Peter wasn't often home, and sometimes at nights or sometimes at daytime. It's because of his work as a security guard. He sometimes had a different work schedule, mostly at nights. So I was eventually at other home at nights, and I wouldn't mind it. I mean, I did live by myself even before he moved in. But eventually, Clemens, he took the next step by asking me out. I was not expecting him to take that step, to be honest though. But he um, he was persistent to ask me out, but I told him no, and that I was living with my boyfriend. But then Clemens told me that he has never seen my boyfriend. I told him the reasons why is because he works at nights most of the time, in which Clemens didn't believe me, and still don't, or still didn't believe me. But even from that day, he still tried to hit on me, and eventually I got so tired, and I told him to tell Peter all about this happened. Of course, and he told me, just ignore him. He will eventually stop, and if you just ignored him, he will eventually stop. At first, I thought he had a point, but so I just started ignoring Clemens for most part of that, even though I had maybe uh, some conversation like good morning or something like that. But the most of the time, I just ignored him. But it didn't work. And one night, when I was home alone, Peter was at work. This was around 10 p.m. or so, I believe it is, if I remember correctly. And one that evening, just around 10 p.m., like I said, um, Clemens came to my door, knocking, and I can hear he was slurring some of his words. Then I realized he was completely drunk. He was completely wasted. And he demanded me to let him inside so we can talk. But I told him to leave, but he refused. And then suddenly he tried to slam against himself against the door. I mean, I got so scared, I didn't even know if the door could hold him. So I took my phone, went to the bathroom, locked the door. I immediately called Peter, who was at work, and when I told him, he's like, "Hey, honey, I'm sorry, but I can't talk long. I'm at work." But then when he heard me frantically say, "Whoa, whoa, 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 what's happening?" I tried to do the curtailing happening while crying, even though he probably could only understand maybe one or two words from my sobbing. But I managed to collect myself and told him, Clemens at the door, slamming against it, trying to get in, really drunk. Please, help! And then hang up on the phone because at that time, Clemens managed to get in the room, or he broke down the door, and Peter left his work, even though he wasn't supposed to. But after he said to his boss what was going on, he had permission, and Peter called immediately for the police. And as Clemens walked into the apartment, he went up to the bathroom door and started knocking, like taunting me or teasing me to open the door. And he said that he will be peaceful, he just wants to talk. But I refused. I was even sitting in the bathtub, hiding, trying to make sure that he didn't know I was in there. But he probably knew I already were there. But as he was trying to bang down the bathroom door, I heard suddenly another sound, and I later found out it was Peter. Peter, who was at the work, but his work wasn't that far away from my apartment. He tackled Clemens down to the ground and held him down, and he was later arrested when the police showed up. He was taken away and later evicted from the apartment complex, and he was sent to jail. And after that, me and Peter installed a stronger door, and I did get a restraining order against Clemens, who tried to contact me from prison for a few times, but eventually stopped after having those breaking the restraining order and without any no contact at all. So eventually, it stopped, and I'm very much glad for that. I mean, in the beginning, Clemens seems to be a very friendly, outgoing guy, but he was very persistent to have me to dating him. I don't know why, but he really wanted to date me because I tried to telling him many times that I was already dating, but he didn't seem to care or even believe me. Even when he did see me with Peter from time to time, he thought believing maybe that was just a guy friend of mine, but not my boyfriend. But even though Clemens wasn't in jail for a long time, maybe for at least a few years at most, I don't remember exactly how long, but even if he's out, he had to follow this restraining order to stay away from me, which he had for now. And I really don't know if he even coming back or not, but and so for that, Clemens, for our the best way to say this, stay away from me and I won't be able to have peace. So thank you. So stay away. After turning 20 years old, I thought it was time for me to take the next step to move out to my own place. My older brother Michael, who is 22 years old at the time, he had moved out 2 years earlier, and when I told my parents about this idea, they were actually very happy that I want to be more independent. So my dad helped me to find this apartment complex in town. So at the moving day, me, my parents, my older brother, and of course my fiance Daniel wanted to help me to move some of my things. We moved some of my furniture and all that into my new place. And to be honest though, I actually had been planning to move out for a short while, but I wasn't really sure if I was ready or not. But since my brother moved out when he was 20 years old, so I thought, why not? So after I moved in, I met the manager of the apartment complex, and he was a friendly guy. He was around in my dad's age, around 40 to 50s, I believe. And one day he sent me this maintenance man to my apartment to fix my sink. I had some problem with it. So the guy was about a few years older than me. He was about 28. His name was Victor. We talked a lot, and he was very friendly, very talkative. And to be honest though, I'm a talkative person myself, so I didn't see any difference. And we just talked about what my how I like to be living in this apartment, and He told me it has been working there for about 5 years, and after he finished, he told me if I had any other issues, don't hesitate to give him a call, no matter what time of the day or night. I told him I would. And from that day, I started enjoying my apartment, and I was having a good time. Even though Daniel was supposed to be moving in with me, but hasn't yet. And one day when I had my older brother Michael over for visit, Victor came over to inspect my shower since I had some problems with it. There was some not a strong pressure in it. But when he saw Michael sit on the couch, his manner changed from a happy, talkative to very more cold attitude. I had no idea why. After he did his job well enough and left. Even Michael pointed out and said, "Oh, that was odd." And I agreed with that. Because it was very weird. But because when Victor just walked in, he was very happy, very friendly, and then just simply turned cold. I don't know what if he had a bad day or something or but just and even at the time Daniel had moved in with me. He was working as a bartender. So he worked most nights so that he wasn't usually at home until like 3 or 4 in the morning. But one day I ran into Victor in the hallway. He had just left one apartment and he said that he was free out of the day and he asked me if I was free to grab a drink or maybe a dinner. But I told him I was flattered, but I told him I was already engaged and wasn't looking for any other people. Of course, he looked a little bit upset about this, but he had a smile that he understood. And I thought maybe that was just a bit quite odd interaction. But from time to time, I could see that he did ask me the same thing once again over and over, but I told him no as always standard answer. I don't understand why he didn't get understand. But but he told me enough that he had enough. He told me to leave my fiance and I should date him instead because he's older, more handsome, and earned more money. But I refused. I was like, there's no way I would leave my fiance, which I have been engaged for about 2 years and been dating for at least a few years more than that. We actually met in high school, just saying it. But from that day, when I got home, I started to find out that some of my things, like clothes, like underwear or something like that, was gone. And other few things, like some of the food was missing. I was like, did Daniel came home earlier to grab the lunch maybe? But I didn't even brought that up to him. But eventually, I realized that some of the clothes that did went missing. I knew that they weren't in the laundry basket, and Daniel wouldn't take them or misplace them. So when he got home, I told him about this, and even he started getting worried because this was not unlike anything. This started shortly after he had moved in, but and so Daniel installed a camera which had a view towards the front door. At first, the few days, nothing didn't happen. We had these cameras that we could see on our phones, but it didn't show anything. But one day, we saw that Victor walked in our apartment, walked around, drinking and eating from our kitchen. Even sat down and watched TV and took sort of the money from the jar that we have in the kitchen. They were like not big money amount. They were probably maybe $20 or $30, something like that. But we were stunned. Now we know, and now we knew it was Victor the whole time. This was because having him creeping me on, it was one thing. But entering our apartment on a schedule that was no even we needed when we didn't need his help with anything. Just walk in as he's lived there, just took some of our food, took some of our money, and even just stole my clothes. We eventually called maintenance of the apartment complex and informed them what was happening, and we did call the police and made a report. The police took him in. He tried to deny that he never did anything, but after he saw the footage, he went silent. After a moment, he admitted that he was in love with me, and, well, I can say that he was fired and arrested for a few years of being breaking in, stealing money, and some other things. I don't know what to say, but still. I even had a restraining order against him, just in case if he would try to contact me afterwards, but he never did. And eventually, 6 months later, me and Daniel moved out, and we decided to move in a small house instead. And it was probably best because despite this, despite living on my own at first, Victor seemed to be very friendly, but it was like an act, and I was really happy that Daniel moved in. If Daniel hadn't installed the camera and we didn't know it was Victor the whole time, who knows what else he could have done. But I'm glad that he ended up behind bars for at least a few years about his doing. And for that, I'm just glad that we moved out there eventually and find our own house. And that was my only time living on my own and eventually with my partner having such scary time. So yeah, Victor, stay away from us. Thank you.